There are some days you never forget. Your wedding day. The day your first child was born. The day you bought your first house. And for some people, the day their marriage ended. But for Tosan, there was another date she would never forget. It was the day her husband Dimeji looked her directly in the eyes, placed divorce papers in front of her, and said, "Sign it. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you are ready, today." On their wedding anniversary. Dimeji thought he had won. He actually smiled. That was the part that would make the whole thing unbelievable later. Because while Dimeji was sitting across from his wife, feeling like a champion who had finally defeated the woman he had spent 7 years trying to control, Tosan was looking at the papers and quietly thinking, "So this is how you want to do it." She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she didn't throw the papers at him. She simply picked up the pen. And that was the biggest mistake Dimeji would ever make, because he had no idea what Tosan had already prepared. But before we get there, let us go back to the beginning, because this marriage did not start with hatred. Oh no. It started with the kind of love that makes people around you tired. The kind where two people cannot sit in the same room without smiling at each other. The kind where everybody at the wedding reception was already tired of hearing, "My husband, my wife. My husband said this, my wife likes that." Even the MC eventually said, "Madam, we have heard. Please allow us continue with the program." But nobody knew that 7 years later, those same two people would sit at a dining table and negotiate the end of their marriage like two lawyers arguing over a failed business. Tosan had met Dimeji at a professional conference in Abuja. She was there because her company had sent her to represent the finance department. Dimeji was there because, according to him, he was building strategic relationships, which, translated into normal Nigerian language, meant he was walking around collecting people's numbers. The first time he saw Tosan, she was standing beside the refreshment table arguing with a waiter. Not because the waiter had done anything terrible. The man had simply brought her pineapple juice when she had asked for orange. But Tosan had that particular kind of seriousness where even juice needed to understand the assignment. She looked at the glass, looked at the waiter, then said politely, "Please, I asked for orange." The waiter apologized. Dimeji, standing behind her, laughed. Tosan turned. "What's funny?" "Nothing. You're laughing." "I laugh easily." "Then control yourself." Nobody had spoken to him like that in years. He smiled. "I'm Dimeji. I didn't ask." That was it. That was the beginning. And somehow Dimeji fell. Not slowly, not gradually. He fell like someone had pushed him from the 3rd floor. Within 2 weeks he was calling. Within 1 month he was visiting. Within 3 months he was telling his friends, "I've found my wife." His friend Kalechi nearly spat out his drink. "Which wife?" "My wife. You've known this woman for 3 months. Sometimes you just know." Kalechi shook his head. "Brother, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you are simply hungry." Dimeji ignored him. He was convinced Tosan was different. And honestly, at the beginning, she was. Tosan wasn't impressed by his car. She wasn't impressed by his expensive shoes. She wasn't impressed by the fact that he had connections. She cared about how he treated people. She watched how he spoke to waiters. She watched how he treated security guards. She watched how he spoke about his mother. And Dimeji passed those tests. At least, that was what she thought. He was charming, funny, ambitious, confident. And he had that dangerous quality some people possess, where they can make a lie sound like a motivational speech. When he proposed, he did it at a rooftop restaurant in Lagos. There were candles, flowers, a violinist, and a ring so large that Tosan immediately said, "Dimeji, this thing is too much." He laughed. "Nothing is too much for my wife." She said yes. Their wedding was beautiful. People flew in from Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and even outside Nigeria. The reception was full of food. There was jollof rice, fried rice, peppered chicken, small chops, asun, moi moi, and enough drinks to make 3 different families forgive one another for past arguments. Tosan looked radiant. Dimeji looked proud. When they danced, everyone cheered. Her father held her hand and told Dimeji, "Take care of my daughter." Dimeji nodded, "I will." And for the first few years he did, or at least it looked like he did. They built their lives together. Tosan was a financial strategist. Dimeji was an entrepreneur who had started a logistics company. They bought land, invested, saved, built. They traveled. They hosted friends. They supported family members. And after 3 years, they welcomed their daughter, Maria. That child became the center of their universe. Dimeji would carry her around the house. He would sing badly to her. He would tell everyone, "My daughter will never suffer." Tosan would laugh, then start saving for her university fees. He would reply, "Madam, I have already planned everything." And Tosan believed him. But slowly, something changed. It wasn't dramatic at first. There was no one big fight, no explosive betrayal. It was small things. Dimeji began coming home late, then later, then sometimes not at all. When Tosan asked questions, he became irritated. "I'm working." "I didn't say you weren't working." "Then why are you questioning me?" "Because you didn't come home." "I told you I had meetings." "Until 2 a.m.? "Yes." "With who?" Dimeji sighed. "Tosan, please. I'm not a child." Then came the password changes. His phone became permanently attached to his hand. If he went to the bathroom, the phone went with him. If he went to shower, the phone remained in his pocket. One day, Tosan laughed. "You're behaving like the president." Dimeji didn't laugh. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Then came the mysterious perfume. Tosan knew her husband's scent. She knew his deodorant, his cologne, even the smell of his shirts after he returned from work. But one evening, Dimeji came home smelling like a woman's expensive perfume. Tosan looked at him. He looked at her. She raised an eyebrow. "You smell nice." "I always smell nice." "No, this one is different." He became defensive. "Maybe somebody hugged me." "Somebody?" "Yes." "Who?" He laughed. "Tosan, please." She didn't push, but she remembered. And there were many things Tosan remembered. She was not the kind of woman who forgot details. She simply didn't react immediately. That would later become Dimeji's biggest misunderstanding. He thought her silence meant weakness. He didn't understand that sometimes silence is simply somebody collecting evidence. By their 5th anniversary, the marriage had become different. They still smiled for photographs, still attended family functions, still looked perfect on social media. But behind closed doors, they barely spoke. Dimeji began sleeping in the guest room. When Tosan asked why, he said, "I have early meetings. Then, I snore. Then, you disturb my sleep." One excuse became another. And Tosan stopped asking. She focused on Maria. She focused on her work. She focused on the businesses they had built. Because while Dimeji was becoming emotionally distant, Tosan was quietly becoming more financially independent. She had always been intelligent with money, but now she was strategic. She began reviewing documents, company records, property papers, investment accounts, partnership agreements. She discovered things she didn't like. Some assets were in Dimeji's name, some were jointly held, some companies had strange ownership structures, and some transactions had been made without her knowledge. She didn't confront him, not yet, because she wanted to understand everything first. Then one day something happened. She found an email. It was not intended for her. It was between Dimeji and his lawyer. The subject line read, "Divorce and Asset Positioning." Tosan stared at the screen. For several seconds she didn't breathe. Then she opened it and read. Dimeji had been planning to divorce her. Not only that, he wanted to make sure she received as little as possible. There were discussions about properties, companies, accounts, custody, and another woman. Tosan sat back in her chair. She wasn't surprised that he wanted a divorce. What shocked her was the confidence. Dimeji genuinely believed he could remove her from the life they had built together, as if she had been a passenger, as if she had contributed nothing, as if she had not spent years helping him build the very empire he now wanted to keep. She closed the laptop, and for the first time in years, Tosan smiled. Not because she was happy, because she finally understood the game, and she was going to play it differently. Dimeji had a plan. He wanted the divorce, but he wanted it on his terms. He had already consulted lawyers. He had already spoken to a woman named Sadiola, the same woman whose perfume Tosan had smelled months earlier. And he had already promised Sadiola a future. The funny thing was that Sadiola believed she was marrying a wealthy man. She didn't know the wealth had two names attached to it. Dimeji had spent months telling her, "My wife and I have been finished for years. She knows. We're only together because of our daughter. I will leave her soon." Classic. The oldest excuse in the handbook. And Sadiola believed him. Why wouldn't she? Dimeji had shown her expensive restaurants, bought her gifts, taken her on trips, even rented an apartment for her. He made her feel like she had already won. Meanwhile, Tosan knew everything. She simply watched. She didn't confront Sadiola. She didn't call her. She didn't fight. She didn't post cryptic WhatsApp statuses. No. Some people will soon cry. No. God sees everything. No. My silence is not weakness. Tosan was too busy. She was doing something much more dangerous. She was preparing. She hired a lawyer. A very sharp one. Her name was Barrister Nikiru Dik. Nikiru was the type of lawyer who could look at a contract and make the person who wrote it apologize. When Tosan showed her the documents, Nikiru read everything carefully. Then she looked up. "Are you sure you want a divorce?" Tosan nodded. "I've been sure for a long time." "Then why haven't you left?" "Because I wanted to know exactly what I was leaving." Nikiru smiled. "Good answer." They spent weeks reviewing the marriage's financial history, and what they discovered was astonishing. Tosan had contributed far more than Dimeji had admitted. Some of the properties Dimeji considered exclusively his had been purchased using joint funds. Some company shares had been transferred improperly. Some investments were connected to Tosan's early capital. There were documents, bank transfers, emails, receipts, contracts, everything. Tosan had not been sitting around doing nothing. She had simply trusted her husband, and now that trust had become evidence. But there was something else, something Dimeji didn't know. 3 years earlier, Tosan had inherited a significant property portfolio from her late aunt. Her aunt had been a quiet but extremely successful businesswoman. She had owned commercial buildings in Lagos and Abuja. Tosan had never told Dimeji the full extent of the inheritance. He knew she inherited something. He didn't know how much. He assumed it was modest. He was very wrong. The properties were worth several hundred million naira, and they were entirely hers. Not marital assets, not joint assets. Hers. Tosan had kept them separate. She had also invested part of the inheritance, and those investments had grown. Dimeji thought he was divorcing a woman who depended on him. He was actually divorcing a woman who had been quietly building a financial fortress. And then came their 7th anniversary. Dimeji chose the date deliberately. He wanted drama. He wanted control. He wanted to make Tosan feel humiliated. He booked a private dinner. He bought champagne. He even arranged for Maria to spend the night with his sister. Tosan knew something was coming. She arrived at the restaurant wearing a simple black dress. Dimeji was already there. He stood when she entered. For a moment he looked at her, and perhaps somewhere deep inside, he remembered the woman he had once loved. The woman who had danced with him at their wedding. The woman who had held his hand when his first business nearly collapsed. The woman who had believed in him before anyone else did. But then his pride returned. "Happy anniversary," he said. Tosan smiled. "Happy anniversary." They sat. Dinner arrived. For 20 minutes they talked about nothing. Then Dimeji placed a folder on the table. Tosan looked at it. "What is that?" "Something we need to deal with." She opened it. Divorce papers. She looked at the first page, then at him. Dimeji leaned back. "I think it's time." "I've already spoken with my lawyer," he continued. "I've made arrangements." "You've made arrangements?" "Yes." He spoke calmly. almost proudly. We've both moved on. Tosan looked at him. Both? Yes. Interesting. Dimeji ignored the tone. I don't want drama. You invited me to an anniversary dinner to give me divorce papers. I thought it was better to do it privately. Tosan almost laughed. This man had spent 7 years learning her favorite meal, her favorite perfume, her birthday, her dreams, and exactly how to hurt her. And now he was calling this better. He pushed the papers toward her. Sign. Tosan looked at the pen, then looked at him. You want me to sign tonight? Yes. On our anniversary? Yes. Why? Dimeji smiled. Because I want to start a new chapter. There it was, the victory speech. He believed this was his moment. He believed he was finally free. He believed Tosan would cry. He believed she would beg. He believed she would ask him to reconsider. He believed she would say, Please, Dimeji, let's work things out. Instead, Tosan picked up the pen. Dimeji blinked. She signed. Just like that. No argument, no tears, no begging. She signed every required page. Then she placed the pen down. Dimeji stared at her. That was easy. Tosan nodded. Yes, he smiled. I knew you would understand. I understand more than you think. He didn't catch the meaning. He was too happy. He thought he had won. He stood, he even lifted his glass. To new beginnings. Tosan raised hers. To new beginnings. They clinked glasses. And if anybody had been watching, they might have thought Dimeji was the winner. But Tosan had one final thing to say. She stood. Dimeji. Yes? Before I go, there's something you should know. She looked directly into his eyes. You didn't divorce a helpless woman. His smile disappeared slightly. She continued. You divorced a woman who knows exactly what she owns. Dimeji frowned. What does that mean? Tosan picked up her handbag. You'll find out. And she walked away. Dimeji stood there, confused. Then he laughed. He actually laughed. She's bluffing. He sat down, finished his drink, and sent a message to Shadiola. It's done. Shadiola replied immediately. Finally. He thought his life had just begun. He had no idea that the next morning would be the beginning of his financial nightmare. If you are enjoying this story so far, don't go anywhere, because what happened after Tosan signed those divorce papers was something Dimeji never saw coming. And honestly, if you were in Tosan's shoes, would you have signed those papers quietly? Would you have fought? Would you have exposed everything immediately? Or would you have smiled, signed, and allowed the man to think he had won? Tell me in the comments. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe to True Life Diaries, turn on your notification bell, and settle down properly. Because the woman Dimeji thought he had defeated was about to show him exactly who he had been dealing with. Let's continue. The morning after the divorce dinner, Dimeji woke up feeling strangely light. For the first time in years, he felt free. He walked into the kitchen humming. His housekeeper looked at him. Sir, you are happy today. Dimeji laughed. Very happy. Something happened? Everything happened. The woman smiled politely. Nigerian domestic workers have mastered the art of minding their business. She simply said, Okay, sir. Dimeji picked up his phone. He called Sadiola. Good morning. Good morning, darling. It is done. She screamed. You're serious? Yes. Oh my God. Dimeji laughed. Calm down. When are we getting married? He paused. Soon. Soon? Yes. She began discussing wedding colors. Dimeji listened. He smiled. He imagined a new life, new wife, new house, new family. No Tosan, no questions, no accountability, no woman asking, Where were you? He felt victorious. Then his lawyer called. Dimeji, we need to talk. About what? The divorce. I signed everything yesterday. So did she? Yes. Good. Then, the lawyer said, There's something you need to understand. Dimeji frowned. What? I reviewed the documents again. And? Some of the properties you've been treating as yours may not be yours alone. Demeji laughed. Which properties? The Lecky property. My property. Who paid the initial deposit? Demeji paused. Both of us. And the Victoria Island office. Mine. Are you sure? Yes. The lawyer sighed. Demeji, we need to meet. That afternoon, Demeji went to the law office. The lawyer opened a file. Your wife has representation. I know. She has also submitted documentation. About what? Assets. Demeji's face changed. What assets? The lawyer began listing them. Property, shares, investments, business interests. And then the lawyer said something that made Demeji sit back. Her inherited properties are excluded. What inherited properties? The lawyer looked surprised. You didn't know? No. Demeji, your wife inherited several commercial properties. How many? The lawyer named them. Demeji's mouth opened. No. Yes. That can't be right. It is. How much are they worth? The lawyer gave him the estimate. Demeji leaned back. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered. She never told me. The lawyer nodded. Apparently. Demeji suddenly remembered the previous night. You divorced a woman who knows exactly what she owns. He felt a chill. He called her. No answer. Again. No answer. He sent a message. We need to talk. Tosan replied 2 hours later. About what? He typed. The properties. She replied. Which ones? Demeji stared at the screen. He knew she was doing it deliberately. He called again. This time she answered. Hello? Tosan? Yes. You inherited properties? Yes. How many? Why? You should have told me. She laughed softly. Why? Because we're married. She paused. Were. Demeji clenched his jaw. Tosan, don't do this. Do what? You know what I'm talking about. I don't. Those properties. They belong to me. But we're married. We were. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. You hid this from me. She replied calmly. You hid a lot from me too. Silence. Then Demeji asked. Are you trying to take everything? Tosan laughed. No. Then what do you want? What belongs to me? Demeji became angry. You are being difficult. No. I gave you a good life. Tosan was silent for several seconds. Then she said, Demeji, you didn't give me a good life. You and I built a life. That is exactly the problem. He didn't understand. You thought you built everything alone. Then she hung up. Demeji sat in his office. For the first time, he began to worry. But his biggest mistake was still ahead, because he hadn't yet discovered what Tosan had done during the previous 6 months. She had quietly removed herself from every financial arrangement she no longer trusted. She had separated her personal assets. She had secured her inherited properties. She had reviewed every joint investment. She had ensured her daughter was protected. And most importantly, she had copies of every document, every transfer, every suspicious transaction, every message between Demeji and Sadiola. Yes, she had them, because Tosan's lawyer had obtained them legally. And some were very embarrassing. Demeji had told Sadiola, Tosan doesn't know anything about the company. That statement alone would become important, because Tosan knew more than Demeji thought. She had helped build the company. She had created the financial projections. She had negotiated early contracts. She had even lent Demeji money when the business was struggling. But Demeji had slowly rewritten the story. In his version, he was the genius. Tosan was simply the wife. And now he was about to discover the difference between being someone's wife and being someone's business partner. 3 days later, Demeji received a letter. It was from Tosan's lawyer. He opened it. The letter contained a list of financial claims and legal positions. Demeji read it once, then twice, then a third time. His hands became cold. He called his lawyer. This is ridiculous. His lawyer replied, It's serious. She signed the divorce papers. Yes. So what is this? Signing divorce papers doesn't erase financial rights. Demeji stared at the letter. For the first time, he realized something. He had rushed. He had been so desperate to humiliate Tosan that he had not stopped to understand the consequences. And there was more. The house, the family house, the beautiful mansion where they had lived for years. Demeji had always referred to it as my house. But the title documents showed something different. Tosan had contributed significantly to the purchase. And she wasn't asking to take it, she was asking for a fair settlement. Dimeji refused. He wanted everything. That was when negotiations became war. The first family meeting was a disaster. Dimeji's mother insisted everyone should sit down and settle the matter. But after Dimeji told her, "She's trying to take everything from me," her attitude changed. She called Tosan. "My daughter, what is this I'm hearing?" Tosan replied respectfully, "Mummy, I am not trying to take anything that belongs to Dimeji." "Then why are lawyers involved?" "Because we are getting divorced." "Can't you settle it yourselves?" "I wanted to." "Then why didn't you?" Because how could she explain everything over the phone? How could she tell her former mother-in-law that her son had been cheating? That he had planned to push her out? That he had hidden financial information? That he had been preparing a replacement wife before the divorce was even finalized? She simply said, "Mummy, I don't want to fight." Dimeji's mother sighed. "Then please don't fight." Tosan nodded. "I won't." But Dimeji wasn't interested in peace. He believed Tosan was bluffing. He believed she would eventually surrender. And then Shadeola made things worse. She began posting photographs. Not directly, just enough. A dinner, a hand holding flowers, a man's watch in the background, a luxury apartment, a caption, "Sometimes God removes what was never meant for you." Tosan saw it. She laughed. Her lawyer asked, "Are you okay?" "Yes, you're smiling," because she thinks she's celebrating. Then came another post. New beginnings. Let her enjoy. But Dimeji didn't realize Sadiola was becoming impatient. She had expected the divorce to immediately lead to marriage. Instead, Dimeji was drowning in legal problems. His company accounts were under review. Some transactions were being questioned. Several properties were tied up, and Tosan was demanding proper accounting. "You said everything was settled." "It will be." "When?" "Soon." "You've been saying soon for months." "Don't pressure me." "I'm not pressuring you. I'm asking questions." Dimeji hated questions, because questions were what he had spent years avoiding. One evening, Shadeola confronted him. "Did you actually divorce your wife?" "Yes." "Then why is she still involved in your finances?" "Because of the settlement." "Does she own the properties?" "Some." "How many?" Shadeola stared at him. "How much money does she have?" He didn't answer. She laughed. "Ah. What? You don't know." "Know what?" "You don't know how rich your wife is." Dimeji's expression hardened. "She is not my wife anymore." Shadeola smiled. "Maybe not." Then she said, "But apparently she knows how to protect her money." Dimeji hated hearing it, because it was true. Meanwhile, Tosan was rebuilding her life, not because she couldn't afford another mansion. She simply wanted peace. Her daughter remained her priority. She enrolled Maria in activities, spent more time with her, returned to traveling, focused on work, and strangely, she became happier. Her friends noticed. One evening, her friend Temilolu came over. She looked around the apartment. "You know what?" "What?" "You look different." "How?" "Your face." Tosan laughed. "My face?" "Yes." "You mean I was ugly before?" "No." Temilolu sat down. "I'm serious, you look peaceful." Tosan smiled. "I sleep well now." "That man was stressing you." "I didn't realize how much." Temilolu nodded. "You know what I think?" "What?" "He thought he was divorcing you." Tosan smiled. "And?" "You were divorcing him too." Tosan looked at her. That is exactly what he never understood. Months passed. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Dimeji became increasingly frustrated. He had expected Tosan to collapse emotionally. Instead, she became stronger. He had expected her to beg. Instead, she negotiated. He had expected her to fight publicly. Instead, she stayed quiet. He had expected her to become bitter. Instead, she moved forward. And then came the day of the financial disclosure. Dimeji's lawyer asked Tosan to provide information about her assets. She did. The documents were extensive. When Dimeji saw the figures, he nearly stood up. He stared at his lawyer. You knew? The lawyer shook his head. No. How much does she own? The lawyer lowered his voice. Enough. Dimeji swallowed. Then he asked, does she own more than me? The lawyer hesitated, depending on how you calculate the properties and investments. Dimeji didn't let him finish, because he already understood. The woman he had tried to humiliate was financially stronger than he was. Tosan's lawyer submitted evidence showing that she had invested substantial personal funds into Dimeji's company during its early years. Dimeji protested. That was a loan. Do you have evidence of repayment? No. Then it remains part of the financial accounting. Dimeji looked furious. This is ridiculous. Tosan sat quietly across the room. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply listened. After the hearing, Dimeji approached her. You planned all this. Tosan looked at him. No. You knew. I eventually knew. You wanted to destroy me. No. Then what do you want? She took a breath. Peace. He laughed bitterly. Peace? Yes. You're taking my company. No. You're taking my properties. No. You're taking my money. No. Then what are you doing? Tosan looked him in the eyes. I'm taking back what I brought into this marriage. He had no answer. Then she said, and I'm leaving the rest to you. Why? Because I don't want your life. That sentence hurt him more than any insult. Because Dimeji had spent months believing Tosan wanted everything. But she didn't. She wanted freedom. She wanted her dignity. She wanted her daughter protected. She wanted what she had earned. And she wanted to stop living in a marriage where she had to constantly prove her worth. Dimeji finally understood something. He had mistaken possession for victory. Tosan understood that winning meant being able to sleep peacefully at night. And she was already winning. If you are still with me, then you already know this story is not going the way Dimeji expected. The man who thought he had won on his anniversary was slowly discovering that the woman he thought he had defeated had actually been preparing to walk away for months. But there is still one major secret, because Dimeji had one last card to play, and, when he played it, he expected Tosan to come running back. Instead, he accidentally exposed himself in front of the very people he wanted to impress. So don't go anywhere. Subscribe to True Life Diaries if you haven't already, because Part 5 is where everything gets messy. And trust me, Nigerian family drama has entered the building. Dimeji was desperate. And desperate people sometimes make decisions that normal people would make only after losing sleep for 3 consecutive nights. He decided to fight Tosan through their daughter. He told his lawyer he wanted full custody. His argument was simple. Tosan is always working. She travels. She has a demanding career. I can provide a stable home. It sounded reasonable. Until Tosan's lawyer asked, where was Dimeji during the last 12 months? The records were presented. Dimeji had traveled frequently. Many trips were personal. Several were with Sadiola. There were hotel bookings, flight records, messages. And then there were school records. Tosan had attended almost every major school meeting. Doctor appointments, parent events, school activities. Dimeji had missed several. The custody argument collapsed, but Dimeji wasn't finished. He decided to attack Tosan's character. He told relatives, she became arrogant after inheriting money. She thinks she's better than everyone. She abandoned the marriage. She refused to submit. That last statement caused serious arguments, because submission had become his favorite word. Tosan heard about it. She simply said, I don't know what he means by submission. Temilolu laughed. I know. What? He wanted you to submit your brain too. Tosan burst out laughing. Please leave me. But behind the laughter was sadness, because marriage should not feel like a competition. Love should not require one person to disappear so the other can feel powerful. And Tosan had finally understood that. Then came the family meeting. Both families were present. Dimeji's mother, Tosan's parents, several elders, lawyers, and unfortunately, one auntie who had no legal qualification whatsoever, but had appointed herself chief mediator. She began, "Marriage is not easy." Everybody nodded. "Women must learn patience." Tosan looked down. Dimeji smiled. The auntie continued, "Men also make mistakes." Then, she said, "But sometimes, a woman must fight for her home." Dimeji's mother nodded. Tosan finally spoke. "Mummy, can I ask one question?" "Yes." "What exactly am I supposed to fight for?" Silence. She continued. "A husband who has already chosen another woman?" Dimeji's face changed. The auntie looked at him. "Is this true?" Dimeji became defensive. "That is not relevant." Tosan's lawyer placed a document on the table. "Perhaps we should review the timeline." The document showed that Dimeji had been financially supporting Shadiola before he formally filed for divorce. The room became silent. Dimeji's mother stared at him. "Dimeji?" "Mummy, it's complicated." "Complicated?" "Yes." His mother shook her head. "You told me this marriage was finished." "It was." "Before you started seeing her?" Dimeji had no answer. Then Tosan's father spoke. "Enough." Everyone became quiet. "When you married my daughter, I told you to take care of her." Dimeji looked down. "I tried." "No." His voice was calm. "You tried to win." Dimeji looked up. "You wanted to win arguments. You wanted to control the house. You wanted to prove you were the man." He paused. "But you forgot something." "What?" "She was your wife, not your enemy." Nobody spoke. Dimeji looked at Tosan. For the first time he looked tired. Not angry, not arrogant. After the meeting, he followed her outside. "Tosan." She stopped. "What? Can we talk?" "We are talking." "Privately." She hesitated, then nodded. They stood outside. Dimeji looked at her. "Do you hate me?" She thought about it. "No." "Why?" "Because hate requires energy." He almost smiled. "That sounds like you." She smiled faintly. "I just don't want to be married to you." He looked away. "Was there ever a chance for what?" "For us." Then she said, "There was." "When?" "Before you decided I was someone you needed to defeat." Dimeji swallowed. He remembered their early years. Their first apartment. Their first business. Their daughter. Their wedding. He realized something painful. He had destroyed a relationship that once gave him peace because he wanted to feel powerful. Then he asked, "Did you ever love me?" Tosan nodded. "Yes." "Do you still?" She looked at him. "No." That answer broke something inside him because there was no anger, no drama, just finality. Dimeji returned home that night and sat alone. His mansion was huge, expensive, beautiful, but strangely empty. The housekeeper had prepared dinner. He didn't eat. His phone rang. Shadiola. He ignored it. She called again. He answered. "Hello? Why are you ignoring me?" "I was busy." "We need to talk." "About what?" "Our wedding." "Shadiola, not now." "You said after the divorce." "The divorce is happening." "Then why are you still fighting over everything?" "Because she is making things difficult." Shadiola laughed. "No, Dimeji." "What?" "You are making things difficult." He became angry. "You don't understand." "I understand enough." "What does that mean?" "It means I don't want to marry a man who is still fighting with his ex-wife every week." Dimeji said nothing. "I thought you had moved on." "I have." "No." She paused. "You haven't." Then she hung up. Dimeji stared at the phone. He had lost Tosan. And now the woman he thought he was leaving his marriage for was beginning to question him. But the biggest shock was still coming. Because Shadiola had discovered something. She had found out that Dimeji had lied to her about the house he promised her. The apartment he rented for her? It wasn't his. The company he said he owned completely? He didn't. The wealth he showed her? Much of it was tied to assets he had shared with Tosan. Shadiola became furious. She confronted him. "You lied to me." "I didn't." "You said you owned everything." "I do." "No." She pulled out documents. "You don't." Dimeji stared. "Where did you get these?" "Your company." He realized someone inside the company had given her information. "You have no right." "I have every right." What do you want? The truth. He was silent. Did you divorce your wife because of me? No. Then why? Because the marriage was over. Were you cheating before the divorce? Dimeji didn't answer. Sadeola's eyes filled with anger. So you lied. I'm sorry. She laughed bitterly. You're sorry? Yes. She picked up her bag. You know what is funny? What? You told me your wife was the problem. Dimeji looked at her. And now I'm beginning to think you were the problem. She walked away. For the first time, Dimeji was alone. Completely alone. And the irony was painful. He had spent years wanting freedom. Now he had it. And he hated it. The divorce was finalized several months later. There was no dramatic courtroom shouting, no television interview, no public scandal. Just paperwork, signatures, legal decisions, and a marriage that officially ended. Tosan walked out of the courthouse with her lawyer. She looked calm. Her daughter was waiting in the car. When Maria saw her mother, she smiled. Mummy. Tosan hugged her. Hello, baby. Are we going home? Yes. Which home? Tosan laughed. Our home. And that was enough. Dimeji walked out separately. He looked different. Older. Quieter. His friend Kelechi met him outside. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Kelechi said, So. Dimeji looked at him. Don't. Kelechi raised his hands. Okay. They walked toward the car. After a few steps, Kelechi said, You remember our conversation 7 years ago? What conversation? When you told me Tosan was your perfect woman. Dimeji sighed. Yes. Kelechi nodded. She was. Dimeji looked at him. I am not starting anything. Kelechi paused. I'm just saying, what? You won the divorce. Dimeji stared at him. Congratulations. Dimeji didn't answer. Kelechi smiled sadly. But did you win? Dimeji looked away. That question stayed with him, because technically, he had won nothing. He had lost his marriage, lost his family structure, lost several assets, lost the woman who had once believed in him, lost the relationship with his daughter, as it used to be. And the woman he had expected to marry had left. His company survived, but barely. He had to restructure, sell some properties, repay some debts, and rebuild his reputation. Tosan, on the other hand, moved forward. She expanded her investments. She launched a new consulting firm. She began speaking at women's business events. She became known for financial education. And one evening, she was invited to speak at an event in Lagos. The topic was, Knowing Your Worth Beyond Marriage. The room was full. Young women, business owners, professionals, entrepreneurs. Tosan walked onto the stage. She smiled. Good evening. The audience applauded. She began. Sometimes people think your worth is determined by who loves you. The room became quiet. But it isn't. She continued. Sometimes people think leaving a marriage means you failed. It doesn't. Sometimes people think losing a relationship means losing your future. It doesn't. Sometimes the person walking away from you thinks they are winning. The audience laughed softly. Tosan smiled. And sometimes you have to let them think that. More laughter. She continued. Because peace is more valuable than proving a point. That sentence became the highlight of the event. A woman in the audience asked, Madam, what if your husband leaves you for another woman? Tosan smiled. Let him go. The audience murmured. Don't compete with someone who is willing to accept what you have already outgrown. The audience applauded. Then someone asked, What if he comes back? Tosan smiled. Coming back is not the same as changing. The room erupted, and that statement eventually became one of the most quoted lines from her speech. But there was one person watching the video later. Dimeji. He sat in his living room. He watched her speak. And he realized she was talking about him without mentioning his name. He watched until the end. Then he turned off the television. For a long time he sat quietly. Eventually he picked up his phone. He opened their old photographs. Their wedding, their first Christmas, their first trip, Maria as a baby, Tosan laughing, him laughing. They had been happy, really happy, and he had destroyed it. Not because he didn't love her, but because somewhere along the way, he had confused love with control. He thought being a husband meant being the person with the final word. He thought success meant being richer. He thought winning meant making her feel small. He thought divorce would make him powerful. But the day he made her sign those papers on their anniversary, he unknowingly released the woman who had been carrying half the weight of his life. He thought he was cutting her off. Instead, he cut himself loose from the person who had been supporting him. One afternoon, he went to see his daughter. Maria ran toward him. "Daddy." He hugged her. "Hello, princess." She looked at him. "Are you staying?" "Yes." "Good." They sat together. Then she asked, "Daddy, why don't you and Mummy live together?" Dimeji looked down. Children have a way of asking questions adults spend years avoiding. He answered carefully. "Sometimes adults make mistakes." "Did you make a mistake?" He swallowed. "Yes." "Did Mummy?" "Not the same kind." Maria thought about it. Then she said, "Are you going to marry again?" Dimeji smiled. "I don't know." "Maybe you should marry Mummy again." He laughed. "Why?" "Because you were happier." Dimeji became quiet. Children notice more than adults think. He hugged her. "I want you to know something." "What?" "Your mother is a very strong woman." Maria smiled. "I know." Dimeji laughed. "You know?" "Yes." Then she added, "Everybody knows." And for the first time he accepted it. Tosan had always been strong. He simply hadn't respected it. Exactly 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Tosan received a message. It was from Dimeji. She stared at the screen. The message was short. "Happy anniversary." She smiled. Not because she wanted him back, because the irony was almost too perfect. She replied, "Thank you. I hope you're doing well." He responded, "I am. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Tosan stared at the message. Then another arrived. "I thought I won when you signed those papers." Then he continued, "I understand now that I lost something much more valuable." Tosan didn't immediately reply. She thought about the woman she had been 7 years earlier. The woman who had stood at an altar and believed she was entering forever. The sun was setting. Lagos was glowing. Cars moved along the road. People were rushing home. Life was continuing. And Tosan smiled. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. It's building a life so peaceful that you no longer care whether they regret it. And that, my dear viewers, is how Dimeji discovered that winning a divorce does not always mean winning the battle. He thought the biggest victory was making Tosan sign those papers on their anniversary. He thought she would cry. He thought she would beg. He thought she would lose everything. But Tosan did something he never expected. She signed. She walked away. And she rebuilt. The lesson here is simple. Never mistake someone's silence for weakness. And never assume that because someone loves you, they cannot survive without you. Sometimes the person you think you are defeating is simply waiting for the right moment to walk away. So, let me ask you, if you were Tosan and your husband handed you divorce papers on your wedding anniversary, would you sign immediately like she did? Or would you fight for the marriage? And if you were Dimeji, would you regret your decision after discovering what you had lost? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, because I want to hear what you would have done. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to True Life Diaries, turn on the notification bell, and share this story with someone who loves a good lesson wrapped inside serious Nigerian drama. And please remember, sometimes people think they have won because you stopped fighting. They don't realize that you stopped fighting because you finally chose yourself. Until our next story, stay safe, stay wise, and never allow anybody to make you forget your worth. This is True Life Diaries, and every life has a story. See you in the next one.